The 2022 NFL Draft is a wrap, and Jets fans have plenty of reason to be happy with the work Joe Douglas has done. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to register with JetNation.com, where you can become a part of the most active Jets message board on the web. So the Jets enter day 3 with 2 picks, both in round 4, picks 111 and 117. They come away with a versatile offensive tackle in Max Mitchell and another edge rusher in Michael Clemons. As I'd said in previous episodes, it would have been a really good idea for the Jets to attack the edge position and go with multiple edge players. They do just that after taking Jermaine Johnson at 26. In Clemons, the Jets get a guy who's a bigger edge guy, super long-limbed, 35 and an eighth inch arms, I believe, 35 and a bit. Really high motor guy, explosive guy, can bend the edge. And if you look at him, the example or the best game I watched, the game that really sort of made me aware of him as a player, was his game against Alabama. He had a couple of sacks. He beat Evan Neal. Just a really good all-around game. He came around the edge to get to the quarterback. He rushed up the middle to get to the quarterback. You saw the high motor. You saw him use all of his traits. And that was the game that, as I said, I first noticed him and thought, let's watch a little more of this guy. Watched a few more of his games and thought he could be a good mid-late round pick. I thought late round pick because all the predictive sites that rank these guys are telling me he's ranked in the hundreds. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's not as good as I think he is. Maybe he's around 6 or 7. But in recent weeks, we've seen him sort of tick up some of these boards and work his way up, and then he ends up landing right about where he probably should have. Middle round guy, very productive in college. And in Mitchell, as I said, the Jets got a versatile guy. He's played left tackle. He's played right tackle. He spoke with the media yesterday, said he's also played a little bit of left guard. This, of course, was necessary because of the questions surrounding not only Makai Bechten's health, but George Fant's contract status. So you now have a swing guy who will probably replace Chuma Edoga. More on that later. And let's grade this draft. I threw some grades onto a quick report card this morning. It's on JetNation.com. I'll run through them here real quick. And listen, if you don't like the grades and you're going to say you're just a homer, I don't know what to tell you. Everybody, everywhere, this draft class is being praised universally. I've yet to see one person say the Jets didn't hit a home run. The only time I've heard the Jets mentioned, whether it's on the podcasts or the networks or wherever, is being one of the best, if not the best classes of the 2022 draft. And as I said the other day, I know none of these guys have played a snap. They might all bust. They might all be first ballot Hall of Famers. They'll probably fall somewhere in the middle. But based on what we've seen on film, the notes, whether it's the notes that are being read off by the former scouts, the thoughts of former players, the notes we've taken ourselves as fans, as observers, just kind of come to our own conclusions. We're gonna put that all together and decide for ourselves: did the Jets approach this the right way, and did they get some good players? So yeah, the actual did this class work out or not? Yeah, that grade is for a few years down the road. But talking in terms of today, right now, what the Jets did, who they got, Sauce Gardner at 4. Is there anything other than an A+ for that? You got a number 1 corner who didn't allow a touchdown throughout his entire collegiate career. Runs a blazing 40, has long limbs, can play zone, can play man. I mean, it's A+. I don't see any way anyone can knock that pick. There's nothing wrong with getting arguably the best corner in the draft for a team that needed corners, needed defense. So, yeah, did the Jets get some solid performances out of some young corners last year? Absolutely. But far from these weren't shut down day one starters, that you go into the following season and say, these guys are definitely our guys next year. No. The Jets needed upgrades at corner, and they upgraded with a guy who, again, at worst, is viewed as the second best corner in this draft. But if you value durability and availability, he's the number 1 corner. And it's not really that close if we're taking those into account. With the 10th pick, they get Garrett Wilson, a guy who, again, some had as the number 1 corner. Me, I would have said Jameson Williams. He would have been my number 1. But you get guys like Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, the former scouts of the world. They called him the best receiver in the class. That's an A+. You get the best receiver or the best player at their position in a given draft class, and it fills a need. That's only an A+. There's no other grade for that. And then Jermaine Johnson, A+. Again, call me a homer. The guy was a projected top 10, top 15 pick. There was talk of the Jets taking him at 4. I like the guy. Even I thought that was a little bit crazy. But you're talking about an edge rusher, premium position, fills a need, projected top 10, predicted by some to be top 5, and you get him at 26? A+. I said, I did this article earlier, I was waiting to not give somebody an A+. If Joe Douglas would have stopped taking the best player at each position, I could have done that. So guess what Breece Hall gets? A+. You got the number 1 back in the class, the only guy who was being discussed as a potential first-round pick, a guy who was probably going to win the starting job, an incredible off-the-chart size-speed combination, scored 1 million touchdowns in college, can cut on a dime, accelerates well. No reason to believe that if this offensive line is healthy, he won't not just win the job, but that he won't be absolutely phenomenal in this offense. Can catch, can block, A+. Jeremy Ruckert, tight end, out of Ohio State, hometown kid. He gets an A. Okay, there you go. There's a non-A+ for you. Almost gave him an A+ just for his dad screaming. How awesome is that video, by the way? But listen, Ruckert, not a huge need. Still love the pick, still love the player. But you signed 2 tight ends. So, Jeremy Ruckert has the worst grade so far with an A. And again, this is just me. You might say B, you might say C. That's fine. But to me, that's an A pick, followed by, preceded by 4 A pluses. Max Mitchell, giving him a C+, only because he's a guy, he's really, from what I've seen of him, really good in the run game, not as good in the pass game, needs to be able to drop his anchor a little bit better, needs to get stronger, so there's some work to be done there. But he's a 4th-round pick. So, it's not as if they're expecting this guy to start tomorrow. But he could be an important piece moving forward, again, given the durability issues and the contractual status of some of these Jets players. Michael Clemons, we go to him, B-, only because, like I said, just a couple weeks ago, I said that he wasn't getting enough love from the draft community, and why wasn't he being talked about more? So I like the guy a lot. His age, however, he played, 5-6 years of college football, and some legal troubles off the field, nothing that alarmed the Jets, and that's a good thing because the Jets have placed such an emphasis on character that if they're willing to roll the dice on a guy who's had some off-field stuff, that tells me they looked into it thoroughly and that they came away happy. So the class overall as a plus, A+. That's, again, Joe Douglas absolutely knocked it out of the park. Joe Douglas just put together a draft class that if we would have said before the draft this is how it would have unfolded, would have said you were crazy. There's no way you're getting the top corner. Arguably the top corner. Again, if we're considering durability, you got the top corner without question. Top receiver, some may even, worst case scenario, the number 2 receiver behind Jamison Williams. That's where I would have had it planted. That's where I would have put him. Then you're getting Jermaine Johnson. You got Breece Hall. All four of those guys, day 1 starters who should have a significant impact. Fantastic job by Joe Douglas and his staff. Last night and this morning, some names start to trickle in from the undrafted free agent market. Let's cover that. Now, the issue here is that some of these guys are signed or, have agreed to sign. Sometimes they change their mind. Sometimes another team calls and says, look, we can give you a better opportunity. So these aren't official. They're never really official until the team announces it, and sometimes they take a little while to do that. So let's say let's start with the top 2 guys. These are really the only guys that I watched extensively because the Jets went small school. These guys, if you're going to go and even if you're going to try to find some games online to get an idea what they can do, you're looking at you're going to find some low quality audio, not the best way to get a look at these guys. But Zonovan Knight was a guy who I thought would be a day 3 pick. If you look at him as a kick returner, not just a running back, but a kick returner, shows really good hands as a running back, catching the ball out of the backfield, can be slippery with the ball in his hands, and then of course, as I said, good kick return guy. So multi-purpose guy. Of all the guys they picked up, probably my favorite in the class, or of the undrafted free agent types. But again, to be fair, he's the guy playing at the biggest university who you're able to kind of get a good look at. After that, Tony Adams out of Illinois. He's another guy that I watched leading up to the draft. Started his collegiate career as a corner. Shows really good speed on tape, and aggressive guy, for a corner, really willing to stick his face in the fan, get really aggressive out of that safety spot. Some places list him as a safety, some places list him as a corner. We'll see where the Jets decide to use him. Then beyond that, we get some obscure guys, which is what often happens in undrafted free agency. But there was some big, JoJo Domann went undrafted. My God, I couldn't believe it. And then I thought, great, the Jets will go get him. Jets didn't go get him. He signed with Indianapolis. Alec Lindstrom, Boston College, undrafted. I would have been all over that. Some names out there that were really surprising to see them go, to not get picked. But it happens every year. There's always a handful of guys that everyone says is, mid-late rounder, and they don't get taken. Jalen Weidermeyer, how crazy is that? Here's a guy who was universally regarded as a first-round pick. When the season started, many felt like he was the hands-down number one tight end in this class. And then I said sort of mid-late season when I was watching a lot of them, we actually had a couple of shows where I said I worry about his drops. I saw a lot of drops from him. And I'm thinking, this is the number one tight end? And I'm counting 6-7 drops when I'm watching Texas A&M games. Then he tests poorly at the combine, like really poorly. And just fell and fell and fell. He goes undrafted. So these things happen. Sometimes the early projections go undrafted, but a lot of the mid and late rounders do too. So, like I said, some good guys out there. But the Jets went with, like I said, some names that many of you will not have heard, and many of these guys you will not have seen them play a single snap. I know I haven't. I've spent the last few hours, 5-6 hours, looking up as much of these guys as I can to try to get some idea. Irvin Charles, wide receiver out of Penn State, what I found initially. And I thought, Jesus, I must have watched 10 Penn State games this year, and I have nothing on this guy. I don't have any. I'm going through my folders, my clips, highlights, nothing. So I thought, I guess I dropped the ball. This guy must have done something if he got drafted. Turns out he was with Penn State in 2015, 7 years ago. He was part of their recruiting class. Spent 2 years there, was dismissed from the team. And then went to Indiana University, Pennsylvania, where he played 4 seasons and dominated some very, very, very small school competition. 6'4". That's all I can tell you about him, because I can't find anything on Indiana University, Pennsylvania, which until about 5 hours ago I did not know existed. So congratulations to them. They've got a football team apparently. And Irvin Charles was on it, and now he is coming to camp with the Jets. Alan George out of Vandy. Now, go to Vanderbilt's football page, or just go ahead and Google Alan George Vanderbilt. Make sure you spell it right, because there's 2 Alan Georges at Vanderbilt. Both have profile pages. One is the football player. The other one looks to be a middle-aged administrator of some kind. So I was very confused for about 5 seconds when I looked up the first Alan George. But again, corner out of Vanderbilt, not a lot of film, not a lot of production, 2 interceptions in 5 years. Measurables suggest maybe he could be a safety candidate. We don't know. Again, we'll see. A lot of these guys just there's not much out there to be found. Keyshawn Abram out of Kent State. He did have a really nice game for himself against Virginia Tech. If you go look that one up, you feel like watching some of him. Kent State's offense didn't do much that day, but Abram did have the only touchdown of the day, which came on a nice dive and grab in the back of the end zone. Good speed, got completely blew away a Virginia Tech corner at one point on what would have been a bomb for a touchdown. Had his quarterback not underthrown him, he had to wait for the ball to come down and got knocked out of bounds. But, again, these guys, Kent State, you're not going to find a lot out there. Florida A&M defensive tackle Savion Williams. Couldn't find the game. And there may be some out there. Like I said, in the course of a few hours, I wasn't able to look up every single one of these super, super small school guys. Deandre Torre, however, out of North Texas. I think I found a game and a couple of condensed games and some highlight stuff. He's going to be an interesting one. He was the first one I looked at and thought, okay, I can see here I can see where this guy's skill set translates to what the Jets like at running back. Really thick lower half, explosive running back, hits the hole in a hurry. Didn't see him catch the ball a whole lot. Read a scouting report on him that says he can. Can't say I saw it for myself. I'm going to look for more of this kid because I think as a long shot, even if we're talking practice squad, I think he could be a guy who hangs around. Probably out of all of these guys, Zonovan Knight, you give the leg up because he played, bigger school, bigger competition, got to see a little bit more of him. But Torre is a guy that I would keep an eye on. And then C.J. Brewer out of Coastal Carolina. Watched the Coastal Carolina game. Didn't see a lot out of him. I'm going to try to look for some more. Again, this is all sort of, let's try to get just a glimpse of these guys so I have some, so I can speak a little bit to what they show on film. But again, when you take these guys, there's not always a lot out there to be found. So more on that in the coming days, weeks, and if these guys hang around long enough, months. So one thing I wanted to talk about, or the next thing I want to talk about in regards to this draft class, what does it tell us about previous draft classes? And what I mean by that is the Jets could have used a little bit of help on the interior defensive line. They could have used a little bit of help at safety and at linebacker. Now, of course, again, they've brought in some undrafted guys. I get that. But they didn't trade down to add picks. They didn't grab any of those positions. So this could be a good thing. This could mean that last year's final pick, Jonathan Marshall, a guy I loved. After the Jets picked him and I watched, 5 or 6 of his games, I came away. He was one of my favorite picks. I mean, just explosive guy, consistently in the backfield. And again, he's an interior D lineman. The Jets need some established guys there, and they didn't pick any up. So either they didn't like any of them in this draft, where it was a thin position, as we'd said previously. But could it mean that they genuinely like Jonathan Marshall and don't see it as being as much of a need in terms of depth on the D line? And the same kind of goes for Jason Pinnock. I said a few times during the offseason it was a real shame that we didn't get a longer look at Pinnock last season. He didn't really get on the field till late in the year where he was playing safety. His first game, maybe 2, he looked a little bit uncomfortable. But then he settled in the final 2 or 3 games of the year. Jason Pinnock played pretty well. Well enough that you kind of started to wonder, could this be his future? Might this be, a kid who's going to transition from corner to safety and find himself a home there? So, the Jets have a couple safeties on the rosters. Of course, they added Whitehead. Joyner's back on a 1-year deal. Ashton Davis. But, again, it's not as if they have, rock-solid guys cemented in outside of Whitehead. So maybe Pinnock, a previous draft pick, is going to carve himself out a role as a safety for Robert Saleh. Now, of course, we know Brandon Echols played a ton of corner last year. He'll be a depth piece. Two of the big question marks are Jamian Sherwood and Hamza Nasruddin. These are guys who were college safeties who were drafted to play linebacker. Jets didn't draft a linebacker. I don't know what that says. I mean, Nasruddin is a real question, as we've talked about, was handed the starting job last year, and it took the Jets all of about 6 quarters of football to bench him for the remainder of the season. He saw a couple reps late in the year, but really was just a special teams guy. Went from starter to special teams in the blink of an eye. So is that something he can overcome? We'll see. Jamian Sherwood, when he got his first start, blew out his, I believe it was an ACL, I forget what it was, at the Atlanta game, just a few feet from where I was sitting at the Atlanta game in London. And so he played, I think it was second or third play of the game. Jamian Sherwood, that was it. He was out for the year. So we don't know what to expect from Sherwood. Pinnock looks as if he may have a chance to be a safety for this team. We don't know what to expect from Hamza Nasruddin. And Jonathan Marshall, same as Pinnock, could be a guy who they like enough that they avoided those positions in the draft, feeling like they had a guy who could give them some depth. Looking at the previous season's draft, first and foremost, Makai Bechten, right? There was some talk. Are the Jets going to draft his replacement? Have they lost faith? Are they ready to give up? And they didn't. They stuck with him. They stuck with Bechten. They had the 4th pick. They could have taken any of the tackles on the board. They did not. Ikem Ekwonu, as I've said it many times over, huge fan, love him, think he's going to be a great player. But I'm glad the Jets stuck with Bechten. The big question mark behind that, obviously, Denzel Mims. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Denzel Mims has managed to beef himself up. If you look at the IG post or the Twitter post, whatever it was on, somebody shared it and I saw it. The dude is ripped. He looks like he has put on a lot of muscle. Like Denzel Mims is putting in the work. Say what you will about what he's done so far, what he could have done, whether or not he's going to be a bust, whether or not you already think he is a bust, all that stuff. He is working this offseason, and it shows. So he's going to come back built like a different player. So we'll see if he gets used like a different player and perhaps produces some different results. So I'm not ready to write Mims off yet. I know a lot of people have. That's the nature of, being a fan in 2022. We like to write guys off as quickly as possible. Ashton Davis, to me, will be sort of a spot starter backup. And, again, the Jets not picking up an extra safety. And with the guys they have on the roster, they're going to have to give Davis some run. And we look at that first Joe Douglas draft. 1, 2, 3. You really feel like, you said it at the time, I said it at the time, a lot of people. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was the only guy that noticed this. Because there were a lot of folks who were pretty upset with Joe Douglas's picks in rounds 3 and 4 of his first draft. I would like to believe Joe Douglas left the room and Adam Gase handed all these picks in. Because you look at Joe Douglas's body of work and then you compare it to this one chunk of picks, this one block, where you just go, what the heck was going on? Jabari Zuniga hasn't done anything, got on the field a little bit last year, picked up 1 sack. I would imagine he's gone with the guys they've added. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he shows up to camp and he's a different guy and finds a way to stick and contribute. LaMichael Pirine, I said last year, I think the only thing that stopped them from cutting LaMichael Pirine last year was, and this is where, Joe Douglas, as much as I've praised him, I think this was just not wanting to admit so quickly that he missed on a guy. And I think LaMichael Pirine would have been cut by most teams last year. Not speaking to Pirine's talent, he might be a decent backup somewhere someday. But as I said, when they hired when the new coordinator came in, I said this guy, of every back on the roster, LaMichael Pirine is the farthest thing that they look for at running back in terms of physical profile. And it showed. He didn't see the field. And he still doesn't fit. And they just added another running back. So LaMichael Pirine, you would imagine, is gone. James Morgan already gone. Cam Clark, sad situation. Hoped he would be a starter. Serious back injury last year. And he hangs him up and retires. So really, in Bechten, you've got a guy, like we've said, shown Hall of Fame potential. Denzel Mims looked solid as a rookie, looked lost as a sophomore. Ashton Davis will be a spot starter. And then Zuniga, Pirine, Morgan, Clark done. Bryce Hall is going to be a starting corner somewhere. He will start this year, I would imagine, with the Jets. Or he will see starter-type reps because of how often we see teams in, 4 and 5 receiver sets. The starters would be DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, but Bryce Hall was a really good pick for value, especially in the 5th round. Braden Mann, punter. Of course, that was a need. He'll hang around for a while. But really, so looking at how this class impacts these previous classes, the biggest things that stand out are Pinnock, Marshall, Bechten. Those are the top 3 to me in terms of what this class and how it will impact those guys in the coming years. Or months, really. So we'll see how long these guys hang around. But I don't know about you. If you're not happy with this class, I don't know what in the world to tell you. I don't know how you could not be happy with it. Not just the players themselves, but how the Jets went about their business. How Joe Douglas, we've talked about before, he came to this team and clearly wasn't willing to come here unless he got a 6-year deal, which is unheard of for first-time GMs. I wasn't in the room. You weren't in the room. I've speculated before that Joe Douglas probably looked Chris Johnson in the eye and said, look, your team's a mess. I'm going to have to tear this thing down before I start building it up again. And so it's going to be a couple years of pain before we turn things around. And that's kind of what we've seen. And Joe Douglas said it the other day in the presser with Robert Saleh. He said, you know what, I want to take a minute to thank Robert and the coaching staff for what they did last year, because we had so many young guys on the roster. They basically threw every young guy out on the field that they could to see what they can. It was an evaluation. It was a 17-game show us what you can do, so that we can cut the dead wood, or cut anybody who's not getting the job done, and move forward with anyone who fits the plan. Move ahead with the guys that you want on the roster. And now, after this draft and this offseason of signing high-level starters and then following that up by drafting 3 guys in the first round, as we said, tried to trade up to get up to draft the 4th guy in the first round, ended up getting him at 36 in Breece Hall. Now Joe Douglas is getting after it. And he's built around the quarterback the way he said he would. Zach Wilson's now, he's got the protection. He's got the weapons. No excuses for Zach Wilson in year 2. None. I get young quarterback, small program, takes time. Yeah, it takes time. You had your time. Last year was your time. Year 1 was your time to sit back, learn, take your lumps, get a look at NFL defenses. If Zach Wilson isn't playing at a very high level by week 6 or 7 of this year, I think it's time to worry. That's when you say, does this kid have it? Because listen, this league right now is designed to let any quarterback under center to just drop back, and everything is about spreading offense. Spread everything out. Anytime a defender impedes or stops you from making a play on offense, there's a flag. Every rule is geared toward making offensive football easier. So even comparing guys like Zach Wilson to quarterbacks of the past, so-and-so took this many years. How long did it take Steve McNair? I like the McNair example because that guy really turned things around from his first 4 or 5 years to the rest of his career from that point. Steve McNair is one of my favorite examples of guys who take a little bit of time, but that rarely happens anymore. It's not to say it doesn't happen, but if you're a quarterback and if it takes you that 4 or 5 years, it's not going to be with the same team. Teams don't give guys 5 years, 4 years to get it. They've got to get it within that first couple years. At some point in year 2, it's got to show that you can make plays. So like I said, Zach's got, in my mind, don't care what anyone says, Elijah Moore with good quarterback play is a wide receiver 1 type. And now you've got Garrett Wilson on the other side. You've got Corey Davis. You've got a couple of tight ends. You've got a couple of running backs. You've got you've got an, if healthy, dominant offensive line. What more can you ask for? If Zach Wilson doesn't perform, slow start I can live with. By sort of week 5, 6, 7, by mid-season, if we're still seeing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 137 yards passing, time to worry. So hopefully we don't get to that point. Hopefully Zach Wilson hits the ground running with the rest of his supporting cast, even with having a rookie receiver, the guys that, even if it means working him in and working Wilson into the rotation, so be it. You've got enough there. You got some chemistry with Berrios. If he's your receiver 3 or 4, that's not a problem. And as I said, Denzel Mims, if he's your 5 and he kind of starts playing at a level he was playing at as a rookie, that's not a bad group. That's not a bad group at all. So that'll do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will have more next week. And hopefully a little bit more on the undrafted free agents. And also, hope we see the Jets go out, add a couple of free agents. Quan Alexander at linebacker would be nice. But this is the time now where teams, they know what they've come away from the draft with. And it's time to look at the remaining free agents to kind of plug some holes here and there. So don't be surprised if some names come rolling in the coming days. That'll do it for me. And we will catch you next week, Jets fans. Have a great one. And as I said, jetnation.com. Log in, check it out, register, and post.